Hello everyone, I'm Dan the Cineman and welcome back to my channel. We are back, baby. I'm sorry it took so long. I've been super busy. Me and my girlfriend Phoebe are in the process of buying a house, so that's taken priority, as you can imagine. There's been a lot to sort out, lots of things to buy, lots of things to think about. But yeah, we're back with a spoiler-free and spoiler-full review of Obsession. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of this film, even if you're not massively tuned into the new releases, because it's gone absolutely crazy. It released last Friday, which was Friday the 15th of May. Unfortunately, I was away the weekend, so I only managed to see it Monday just gone, which was the 18th. And yeah, it was a 2026 release, obviously, directed by Corey Barker, who's only 26 years old. It's an indie film. The production budget was reportedly less than $1 million. It was $750,000. I think it's already made something like $17 million. So it's an absolute success story. We love to see these in cinema. Obsession stars Michael Johnston as Bear and Indy Navarrete as Nikki. The film follows these two after Bear wishes that Nikki would love him more than anyone in the world, and it's about being careful what you wish for. It touches on sort of traits of toxic relationships, but also, control and consent. Obviously, Nikki's character has been taken over by this one wish, and that's what the crux of the film is about. Without going into any spoilers, that's the sort of general synopsis. And yeah, let's get into my thoughts on the film. Just to remind you, because it has been a while since my last video, what I do is I do spoiler-free sections, then I do a spoiler-free sort of wrap-up of my review, then I do a spoiler-full section for people who either have seen the film and want to, know my specific take on specific spoiler-full things that actually happen, or you freaks who don't care about spoilers and just want to hear basically my thoughts on the whole movie. So yeah, if you're worried about spoilers, just switch off as soon as I say, here comes the spoiler full review, and you won't get any spoilers. And yeah, let's get into it. Just to quickly say my usual disclaimer, throughout this video I will be using images. Where required, I will give credit where it's due. However, I do try to use images that are in the public domain, so these will not be given credit. My spoiler-free thoughts on Obsession are that I think it's a good film. I enjoyed it. There were parts that I really appreciated. However, I did leave the cinema slightly disappointed. Like I said, this film's gone absolutely crazy. It's had rave reviews, and I was only able to see it a little bit later on. And the problem with that is obviously it's harder then to form a completely unbiased opinion or go in with no expectations. Obviously, I went into the film with those expectations and I've come out disappointed. Whereas if I'd have seen it before the reviews had dropped, I would have just been able to make my own mind up, if you know what I mean. On Letterboxd, I gave it 3.5 stars, and I said, when a film you thought would be a guaranteed 4.5 plus turns out to be a 3.5. Completely appreciate the objectively great parts of Obsession. Indy Navarrete is obviously insane, and the lighting and cinematography are so good, but ultimately this is a horror film that failed to scare me. Sure, it's creepy in parts, but I was never properly shocked or borderline looking away out of terror. It feels like Corey Barker is trying to take a major leaf out of the Zach Cregger book of horror filmmaking here, which I can't fault him for, but this just isn't weird enough to hit the same as Cregger's formula does. My jaw never hit the floor like it did more times than I can count in Barbarian and Weapons. Certain plot points I felt were frustratingly underdeveloped, brackets the phone call to the One Wish Willow hotline for example, and major moments were lost on me because the tone was neither here nor there. Exhibit A why I hate seeing new releases after they get rave reviews. Just to quickly plug the Letterboxd, because my sister very kindly got me a year's subscription of the patron membership of Letterboxd, so I don't know if you noticed there, but I was able to tweak the poster for Obsession, and I've just been absolutely loving this. It's probably my favourite app on the App Store at this point. I've just been tweaking all the posters, changing my backdrops, and yeah, shout out Sophie for getting me that. Let's just jump straight into the highlight of the film, which is Indy Navarrete, or Navarrete, I'm not quite sure how that's pronounced. I'm sure you've been seeing lots about her, I certainly have. Her performance here is genuinely incredible. It's right up there in terms of, Scream Queens or any horror performance, to be honest. It's that good. I'm sure you've heard other people say it, and I'm saying it as well. I've been seeing in interviews about how they took inspiration from Mia Goth in Pearl and how they all watched Hereditary together, and you can clearly tell because her performance, the facial expressions, the way she moves, the way she's framed actually, she's often framed in the negative space, we can't quite see her face fully, and that just adds to the tension of her performance. She's creepy. And then when she's loud, it's, genuinely terrifying. She is fantastic. I do feel like she hard carries the film a bit. The film definitely relies on her. And I think if her performance was a bit weaker, or even if it was replaced, if someone else did it, this film would not be the same at all. Just talking about the influences of this film, and obviously I mentioned it in my letterbox as well, very clearly influenced by the likes of Zach Cregger and Ari Aster as well. I just mentioned Hereditary there, and obviously these are good sort of touch points for a film like this. Personally, I just don't think it quite gets there. I love all of Zach Cregger's films. I mean, he's only made 2 that I know of, Weapons and Barbarian, but obviously I'm very excited for Resident Evil as well, his next project. And I've seen Midsommar and Hereditary of Ari Aster's, and this film, it just didn't scare me like those 4 films that I just mentioned did. It tries to be weird and it tries to be, fucked up like those films are. It just doesn't lean into that enough, I don't think. I was never properly shocked. Like, my jaw was never open, maybe once or twice, and it was just thanks to Indy Navarrete. But yeah, I just don't think it's, fucked up enough. Like, you think of the horrible moments in Barbarian, for example, like when we first see the monster and when, we understand the relationship there about how she's like caring for them as a mother. It's just properly, excuse my French, fucked up, and I just didn't feel like this film got to those levels. I feel like it could have with the subject material, the obsessive girlfriend who's been taken over by this wish, and it definitely does try. I was never properly like, pillow over the head, looking away from the screen, petrified, and I wasn't really shocked either. That's not to say there's not shocking moments in this film, there definitely are, and I'll touch upon this in my spoiler full section. For me, because the tone was sort of caught between, it was just a bit all over the place, didn't quite master it, they were just sort of lost on me. Whilst they are sort of my personal subjective opinions, it's like I said in my letterbox review, I still really appreciate the objective brilliance of this film. I mean, what it does on that $750,000 budget is so good. The cast is great. The acting is great from all of them. Curry Barker really, portrays a sense of style. This is his first film. And I'm already excited to see what he's going to do next. Like I said, the way he puts Indy Navarrete in these dark negative spaces so we can't see her face, that's just a great touch. It doesn't rely on a lot of horror cliches. Obviously the story of the careful what you wish for is a bit of a trope, but it does feel original. Like I said, it feels original, but obviously it's clearly heavily influenced by these great filmmakers. I don't think it quite gets there, but it's definitely a good effort, and I do think this is worth checking out if you're a horror fan, or like I said, I didn't find it particularly scary, so if you're not traditionally into horror, I think this could be a good one for you. Since the release of this film, I've been seeing really good debates about different aspects, which I'll go into in the spoiler full section. But the main debate is whether, Nikki's being possessed by an entity, or whether it's just the fact that this wish is making her do things against her will. I've got an opinion on this, which I'll share in the spoiler full section. The film does a good job of presenting a lot of clues to, sort of support either way of thinking. Watch the film and let me know what you think, because I'd really like to know. Before and after I saw this film, there was a lot of clips officially released. I'm not sure what you think about that, but personally I'm not a big fan. Again, I obviously know that this is an indie film and probably it didn't have a massive marketing, budget, but I don't think the way forward is just to post like minute-long clips of pivotal moments of the film. I feel like I already knew Indy Navarrete's character Nikki before I went into watching the film. That's because of all these clips. I understand it's a good tool of generating interest. It's sort of how I feel about trailers as well. I don't go out of my way to seek trailers once they're released because I do sort of want that, element of surprise. If I'm going to go and see a film, I already know that I want to go and see it. I'm not going to see a trailer and think, oh my God, now I want to see it even more. That's me anyway. I understand the use of trailers. I think it's often, especially a film like this, it's best going in blind. I wasn't a fan of that marketing campaign personally. I do think the genre of horror is possibly in the safest hands out of any genre at the minute. I feel like, I won't say we're in a golden age, but there's so many new voices that are, pushing original content and just great films out there. We've got the names that I've already mentioned here, Zach Cregger, Curry Barker, who made this film. We've got Kane Parsons, who's releasing Backrooms next week, that I'm really excited for. We've got Michael Shanks, who released Together last year, a hidden gem, I think, that a lot of people missed. Great film, check that out. We've even got Ryan Coogler dipping into the genre with the amazing film Sinners. It just feels like it's in great hands, and I'm really excited. Especially, traditionally, I've not been a massive horror fan. I've not seen that many of the classics. I've probably seen more, in the past, that have released in the past 10 years than I have the past, the previous sort of 50, if you know what I mean. It's definitely an exciting time for the genre. It's not the last we'll see of Indy Navarrete either. 100% she's already blown up, but I'm so excited to see what she, works in next. I feel like over these past 2-3 years, we've had a lot of, breakout talents. Her story is pretty much the perfect example of how cinema can work, right? Because she's in a low, not low, but, sort of medium budget indie film, and she's absolutely blown up, and no doubt her next role will be from, quite a big budget film. We've had Miles Caton last year from Sinners. We've had Chase Infinity last year from One Battle After Another. We've had David Johnson from Waste Man and Alien Romulus. It's definitely an exciting place for emerging talents at the minute. And yeah, Indy Navarrete here definitely will, shoot to stardom. Okay, I went off on a bit of a tangent there, but to wrap up my spoiler-free thoughts of Obsession, it is a good film, it's genuinely well put together, especially considering the budget. It's the first film from Curry Barker. It's the first time I've ever seen Indy Navarrete. It's the first time I've seen Michael Johnston. It just does all the basics really well. I do think it's very, very hard carried by Indy Navarrete. I think she's by far and away the best thing about this film. You think about classic horror performances like Toni Collette in Hereditary. As good as she is, I think the rest of that film is still amazing. I think here the rest of the film is sort of let down because of how good Indy Navarrete is. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, it's still definitely worth your time. More often than not, I'd recommend going to see a film to make up your own mind. I wouldn't be scared about not going to this if you're not traditionally a horror fan. Like I said, it's definitely creepy and it's definitely tense, but like genuinely scary, I don't think so. Maybe you'll think differently. I know a lot of people do because it's got such good reviews on Letterboxd. This is the beauty of cinema, right? But yeah, I'd recommend you go to see it. It's a good film, even if it didn't work on every level for me. Okay, we're going to go into spoilers now, so if you've not seen the film and you don't want spoilers, please stop listening. I mentioned before about the debate between whether Nikki is, being possessed by this entity, and my opinion, I personally don't think she is. I really enjoy these conversation starter films like this is. I don't think she's being possessed. I think it's just the sort of One Wish Willow overriding her and making her do these things. I think that's why she breaks character. A few times we see her pleading for help or writing "not me" on the Polaroids, things like that. And I saw a theory that the reason she cooked the cat and made Bear eat it is because that was a point where she'd been able to break, away from the wish and wanted to punish Bear. One of her character breaks is, in my opinion, possibly the most genuinely scary part of the film, but it's actually not from her. It's when she's pleading with Bear to kill her when she's asleep, and she's managing to override the wish and speak to Bear, and Bear just looks at her and says, "Is being with me really that bad?" That was genuinely terrifying, because it's a really interesting sort of spin. We're obviously watching Bear and we're made to root for him, despite the fact that we know what he's done is horrific. I mean, he literally, sexually assaults Nikki when they have sex, and he knows that she's, not consented. She's not there by will. Because the film is mainly from Bear's perspective, we're naturally empathizing with him. This was just a reminder that, okay, this is a really bad person. That was really scary for me. The other scariest part, and probably the most genuinely creepy, was when Bear calls the One Wish Willow hotline and we can hear Nikki screaming. It starts off as just a funny conversation between this person who you think is just like a, receptionist or, a call centre, customer services sort of thing. And then it gets really dark and we hear Nikki screaming on the phone. However, this is one of those plot points that I mentioned in my Letterboxd review that I just didn't feel was developed at all. We get nothing else about this. I thought this was going to be, sort of a gateway into a major plot reveal or a plot twist where, I mean, I'm not sure what I was expecting. I just thought this was a great part of the film that just really wasn't expanded upon, and that frustrated me. There's all sorts of implications that this could have. I mean, is the real Nikki, trapped somewhere? Is this, call line a sort of hotline to the real person, the real people behind these wishes? There was lots of avenues for exploration here, and it just didn't go into it at all, which, annoyed me. Both of the major deaths didn't really work for me. The first one, where Indy Neverett kills Sarah, the scare, I saw coming from a million miles away, and then when she actually kills her, obviously she's getting her head and slamming it against the steering wheel with a brick in front of it. I know it's an indie movie, and I completely appreciate and love practical effects, but I just thought this looked bad, and it took me out of it. I thought it was very obvious that it was fake. I just didn't think that was filmed particularly well, which, took me out of it and made me less affected by the death. And then Ian's death should have been shocking. I mean, we're literally seeing one of the main characters of the film get shot to death, but it just wasn't for me. It was lost in the tone of, we were sort of laughing at Nikki making Bear scream that he loves her, and then she shoots Ian dead. It just, it wasn't shocking at all for me. This is one of those moments where I feel like it was trying to be like a Zach Cregger level of jaw dropping, but it just fell flat. The ending as well, I mean, it was a nice ending, if a bit obvious, but I just think it could have been darker. I think it would have been dark if maybe Nikki, obviously she wished for Bear to love her as much as she did, and she was in that, she was still in her sort of wish of loving him, but then obviously he died and her wish stopped. I thought it would have been even darker if she was sort of stuck in that wish mode of, having someone that she loves so much, but he's dead, so she can do nothing about it. I understand she was the victim in all of this, so it's nice that she gets a sort of happy ending, but I'm not sure. I just think it could have been a bit darker. I did like that Bear couldn't even bring himself to kill himself, in like with the gun. He cowered it out and took the sort of the easy way out with the pills. He couldn't do the one thing that he knew would save Nikki, so he resorted to sort of the coward's way out. I really appreciated that. And like I said, the ending was satisfactory. I mean, obviously he was horrible, so it's good riddance for him, and it's nice that Nikki's finally broken out of that wish against her consent. But I'm not sure. I feel like it could have been darker, and again, I feel like it would have been darker if it was made by one of the filmmakers that very clearly influenced it. If you're here, you've hopefully seen the film, so do let me know if you agree with what I've said, if you disagree with some of the specific points that I've raised. If you haven't seen the film, I don't know why you're here, but hopefully I've inspired you to go and see it. And I've been Dan the Cineman. My next video will come a lot sooner than this one came, I promise that. And I'll see you at the movies.